Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this candidates meeting at the Spectator Auditorium. We welcome you indeed, and the focus of the meeting is going to be on seniors issues and those items that are concerned to seniors. We hope that we have a good attendance, because I think this is the only all-candidate session where this type of thing is going to be discussed. And this is a joint cooperative effort with the Hamilton Council on Aging and the Retired Teachers of Ontario, District 13, which is Hamilton Wentworth-Haldeman. Now, there are a few housekeeping things I would like to deal with before we get to the bulk of this. First of all, you are welcome to have any of the refreshments that are back there. There won't be a break. We're going to go straight through, so if you feel you need refreshments, help yourself. Also, we know that there may be some people who require assistance using the washroom facilities, which are right out that door, and we have someone volunteering to assist for those people who require assistance. Now, we have a team of volunteers here. The format that will be used this evening is where the candidates have already received a question that is being posed for them to answer. Now, they'll have 3 minutes to answer that particular question. While they're answering, you have a sheet for a question that you would like to pose. Now, I've asked the volunteers at the back who are going to collect these questions just to signal back there so they'll know who you are. So our volunteers will collect the questions here. They'll even assist in writing the questions if you do require some help. Those questions will be collated, and each of the candidates will receive a question from those submitted. If we don't have time to have all of them answered, the candidates will have the questions addressed to them posed, and they can respond, and the responses will be on the website of the Hamilton Council on Aging. I want to make sure I cover all the housekeeping here. My name is Leo Normandeau. I'm with the Retired Teachers of Ontario, District 13, and we have some very special guests here I'd like to introduce to you. First of all, representing the Hamilton Council on Aging is the President, David Nissel. David.
Hello everyone, thanks for coming. We're pleased to be co-hosting this event with the Retired Teachers of Ontario. It's a great opportunity to ask questions of our potential candidates on issues that affect older adults in our community. And thanks everyone for coming out. If you have volunteered for the Hamilton Council on Aging before, thanks for coming out and supporting us again. If you haven't heard about us, it's a great opportunity to ask. We have an information booth at the back, and we have a few of our board directors here that you can ask any questions and learn more about the services that we offer for older adults in Hamilton. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And representing the Retired Teachers of Ontario is our incoming president, Joanne Weeks.
Thanks, Leo. On behalf of the Retired Teachers, Hamilton Wentworth-Haldeman, District 13, we do welcome you here this evening. RTO HCoA advocates for all in the education community, but also for all seniors. It's part of our mission. We look forward to hearing how you can address our areas of concern, candidates, whether that be general older adult questions or ones specific to geriatric care, geriatric training, long-term care, and elder abuse. Thank you all for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Joanne. Now I'd like to introduce the candidates who are here this evening. And I'm going to introduce them in alphabetical order, I think. Peter Ormond from the Green Party. and Ted McMeekin from the Ontario Liberal Party, and Sandy from the NDP Party. The other candidates were invited. These are the ones who have appeared. The format for the day is the phase one. They were all given a question to respond to, and the question was this: what are you, your party, willing to do to promote the health and well-being of older adults? And each of them has drawn, and they will speak in order in answering that question. They'll have 3 minutes to respond to that. Then we're going to get to the questions that you in the audience have. So as they're speaking, you may write your questions down. Just signal by hand that you have a question, and one of the volunteers will collect that question and collate it at the back. I think I've covered everything, have I not? Cheryl? Yeah, okay. Now I'd like to introduce to you the moderator, our moderator for this evening. She is, of course, the city editor for the Hamilton Spectator, and we're very fortunate in having her be here with us. And Cheryl is our moderator for this evening, Cheryl Stepan.
Hope everybody can hear me. I've got a little lapel mic here. Thank you for coming. The Spectator has no official involvement in this event. I'm just happy to be moderating, and I'm happy as somebody who cares deeply about democracy that so many people are here and care to be informed about their vote on June 7th. And thank you to the candidates who have chosen to come. So we are going to start out, as Leo said, with one question that you are all going to be answering. And we have chosen names to determine the order. So the question is, what are you or your party willing to do to promote the health and well-being of older adults? And the first person to answer this question is Peter.
Thank you. I think one of the greatest resources in our world today is the elderly. And from a holistic perspective, we really need to connect with them, because right now isolation and loneliness is a huge challenge. And fortunately, I don't know if my mom made it today, but I'm one of 11 children, and between us, she can still live at home, and we visit, like each of us have one day a week. She goes to church every morning, and then there are various activities during the week, and it's one of the nicest, I call it a ceremony. It's not a duty. It's the most beautiful thing, and I know that it's so meaningful to her, and it's beyond meaning to me. So that's, I think, one of the treasures that we need to reconnect with in society. And someone recently mentioned even sending all the children to daycare. Imagine if we could bridge that with the elderly and actually get them to work together, and what a bond that would be. So I'll just leave that there with the holistic approach. So for the Green Party, we're going to try to work smarter and provide support for seniors so they can actually age in place. And part of that is providing some of the social support that can go into the house and support where needed. And so a few areas, like prioritizing frontline service rather than just administration. So it's actually...
Use the mic.
Oh, can you hear that? Okay, is that better? Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. Do you want me to repeat what I said before? No. Okay.
It's a part of your mom, we all like
Okay, I know that. Okay, yeah, so the Greens will prioritize frontline service rather than administration. And the people that are working, just ensure that they're working at their full scope of practice. So if somebody isn't, if somebody's highly skilled, try to use their skills during their day rather than underemploying them. And then maybe we can bring some less skilled people in to provide company or just be there to support in whatever way is necessary. Another thing is equalization of pay across the sectors. And also training all employees, so mental addictions or mental health, that can be also addressed as part of the process, because depression or other challenges that the adults or older people might face. They're understood, and we try to deal with them collectively. So the other thing we would do is designate the Ontario Person Support Worker Association as a self-governing body for...
Peter?
Yes.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I was just going to give you, you can finish that thought. We forgot to mention that when you have 10 seconds left, yeah, you're going to get a hand over here, and then you'll get a bell when the full time is up. And you just, when the bell goes, you just finish your, go ahead.
Can I say one more thought?
Yeah, just finish your thought.
Okay,
yeah,
so that's
sure.
being innovative with the skilled people in the workforce, such as nurse practitioners. Instead of always having to go to a doctor, maybe we can use a nurse practitioner as the filter to analyze the problems and try to help out instead of having to go to emerge all the time or meet your doctor. Thanks.
Okay. Next, we have the same question posed to Ted McMeekin, our Liberal candidate.
Well, thanks. Can everybody hear me okay? How's that?
Just bring it closer.
How's that?
There it is.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Here, we'll take this one.
Peter to the rescue here. Thanks, Peter. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm pleased to be here, and I want to thank the Hamilton Council, David and Joanne, from the aging sort of retired teachers, and Cheryl, you of course, for making yourself available to do this as well, and to all of you for coming.
I recommend you talk to the microphone.
And for all of you for coming out this evening. That's important. I want to begin by proudly declaring that I'm a senior citizen. And so is my wife Barb, who's here, and we both are active, and we contribute to building a stronger, healthier, more caring community every single day. And you know, it's important that we do that we work together to try to make a difference. I know what a difference seniors make as volunteers and mentors. Many are continuing to work and to contribute to the economy. Others are volunteering and doing splendid things in the community. It's interesting, a recent survey discovered that 87% of seniors actually feel younger than their age. And that's important because I think one of the first things we want to do is promote healthy living and wellness, and that's what we do through the active learning centers. So specifically to the question about what would I do to contribute, I think first and foremost, I recommit to listening. One of the first things I did when I was elected so many years ago was create a seniors advisory group, and we meet a couple times a year. The last 3 or 4 years, we brought the minister responsible for seniors in to listen and have some dialogue. We're the only government in the country, I believe, that has a standalone minister of senior services, which I think is important. Secondly, I would acknowledge that people have different needs at different stages in their life, and that it's not one cookie cutter approach that we can use to assist folk. Third, I think we need to ensure that whatever strategy is employed by government in collaboration with senior centers and others is comprehensive, and it responds specifically to a whole range of needs. We know that 94% of seniors tell us that they want to age in place at home, even if they're palliative. They want to be surrounded by the people they love and the people who love them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So finally we have Sandy Shaw of the NDP party. The same question. 3 minutes, Sandy.
All right, then. Thank you very much. And, the question about what we would do what our party would do for older adults, I mean, I would talk about our platform. And our platform is called Change for the Better. And really, what I and Andrea and the New Democrats understand is that what people in this community want is absolutely no different than what older adults and retirees want. And so what I would say that is that we want a community that's affordable, we want a community that's sustainable, and that is fair for everyone. And in the platform and the things that we're committed to, it doesn't fall under a banner of seniors, or it doesn't fall under a banner of retirees. It's the kinds of things that we all universally want a community to be. But specifically, the thing that people are, whether it doesn't matter your age or your circumstance, people are finding that they're increasingly squeezed. I mean, people are finding that their hydro is increasingly unaffordable. People are finding that, that their incomes, especially retirees, aren't keeping pace with the cost of things. And those are some of the affordability issues that are really important to the New Democrats. Specifically around the things that traditionally we think are of concern to seniors and to older adults, are the kind of livable cities that we want. So older adults and retirees want active lifestyle. It's just like Ted said, there's that recent study that talks about seniors feeling, feeling that they feel better. I'm actually waiting for the study that says that we look younger than we feel, as opposed to that's yet to come. But we want to have active lifestyle, so that includes the kind of transportation needs we want. As a retiree, I'm looking forward to being able to ride my bike somewhere, or to be able to take transit downtown to the market and have that kind of active lifestyle. So that's what we understand with the in our platform, specifically around things like healthcare. We get it. There doesn't need to be any more stories about the concern that we have with our healthcare system. It has a nickname. It's called hallway medicine, and absolutely day one, that's something that the New Democrats will address. I mean, in this community alone, in the month of January, we had 30 Code Zero events, and that has everything to do with the fact that we have a backlog in our hospitals, and that's something that needs to be addressed. Again, whether you're an older adult or whether you're a young family raising kids, we want to make sure that the services that we expect government to provide for us are there where we need them. Finally, around the long-term care, which is something that, as we do age, we are no longer able to stay in our homes with the kinds of supports that Ted has mentioned previously, we need to address the crisis in long-term care. I mean, again, within the first 100 days, Andrea and the Democrats have promised to have what they're calling a find and fix inquiry. And those will immediately address some of the overcrowding, the underfunding, the fact that our loved ones are not getting the care they deserve. So our platform is for everyone, and I'm looking forward to being here and getting into some of the details of that platform that I think will, change for the better, that will impact all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just gonna see if we can get this other mic working.
Hello, is this on?
Okay, I just need to get
have
up
to get a
close.
bit
Okay,
closer to it.
all right, that might help out a little bit. So we're gonna move now to audience questions. And just a reminder that if you have a question, you can fill out the form you were handed on the way in and hand it to one of the volunteers, and they will bring it up. If there's time, we'll get to as many questions as possible. We're not going to take questions directly from the audience. We'll just get you guys to hand in the forms. Okay. 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 We got a bunch of questions starting off on healthcare, and the questions are addressed by the audience members to a specific candidate. Okay. So this first one is for you, Peter. Are you vegan? Are you aware of the many environmental benefits of eating PBWF diet? What can you do to make people more aware? Will you sponsor a screening of the new film Dominion in Hamilton? I'm not sure if you want to tackle all of that, but maybe if you want to just talk about healthy eating and.
Okay. Everything's connected. I think that.
It's a better one. I thought I might go to myself.
Yeah, this veganism, like animal agriculture, is the biggest issue from an environmental perspective, right? Deforestation, use of water, GHG emissions, and right now, as grandparents or elders in our communities, you're probably thinking about the next generation. Because we've been talking about these issues for so long. So regarding myself specifically, you know, I do eat meat occasionally. I'm not fully vegan, I call myself a conscious eater. However, from a Green Party policy, one of the Green Party policies is that we are moving towards a vegan diet. So that's something that, because we react so strongly to somebody telling us what to do, it's going to be a process, but it's a necessary process. So myself, I've been raw I was raw for 3 years, and that was obviously meat-free and raw vegan. However, right now, because of my body type, and I do occasionally have a bit of meat in my diet. So veganism is a huge issue, and the thing is, how are we going to get there? It's got to be a process, and maybe meatless Mondays or some of the other strategies will work. I don't know if I missed some of the other aspects of that question.
That's okay, I think your 2 minutes is about up, so I think you're good.
Okay.
Next question goes to, excuse me, Sandy Shaw. If Sandy Shaw will be elected, can the NDP lobby seniors to be exempt from paying the dispensing fees for prescription drugs?
So pharmacare is a big issue for all Ontarians, and it certainly is a huge issue for retirees. You know, I think it's 1/3 of retirees do not have the kinds of benefits that we understand them to have. And so that specific question is about the copay. And I think that, so to answer that specific question about the copay, I believe it's about, on average, it's about $4 per prescription that's dispensed at the pharmacy. But we will commit to the New Democrats to looking at that copay in terms of income. So I don't know the exact figures, but I believe that, so low-income families, whether they're seniors or not, I'm going to say that we're looking at an average of reducing that to a $2 copay to help things make more affordable for seniors and retirees specifically. But you know, the whole idea of making a pharmacare, universal pharmacare available, the evidence is rock solid that a universal pharmacare plan, and really Ontario is one of, Canada actually is one of the few developed countries that don't have that as part of their healthcare system. The evidence is clear that that kind of a system reduces costs overall to the healthcare system, and in fact, you know, it's quite kind of obvious if the province of Ontario had bulk buying power, they would have the ability to reduce the cost of drugs as one of the biggest purchaser of the drugs that most people need. So in addition to trying to make the copay more affordable for everyone, including retired and older adults, we would certainly make drugs available and more accessible to everyone, and in addition reduce the cost overall to the system.
Okay, thank you. Next question is for Ed McMeekin. If many people are suffering from lack of medical services, it's even more limited for Indigenous people. What is your party prepared to do about this?
Well, that's a very good question. Let me just say quickly, I'm not vegan, and just to get that out of the way, and we've already committed to the pharmacare side on the fees. I think we need to be in discussion with our First Nations brothers and sisters about the situation that they have. There's rampant diabetes in many of our First Nations community, and a lack of nutritious food. One of the things I did when I was Minister of Community and Social Services, after learning a little bit more detail, was to provide some additional resources, money, to families, and based on the number of children they had, so that they could access better diets. That is really an important part of the overall well-being of us as people. It's particularly problematic in First Nations communities. I think we need to be working with the feds and with the First Nation communities and partnering to provide the resourcing based on what the identified needs in those communities are to respond.
Okay, thank you. And I goofed before. I was supposed to give the other candidates an opportunity to respond to the same question. So the person who gets the question first gets 2 minutes to respond. If the other candidates choose to answer that question, then they get one minute. That's how it's supposed to go. So if either of you have anything to say about the first 2 questions that were asked, feel free to weigh in, and if not, I will move on to the next question.
Can I add one thing? I don't know if anyone's seen the movie Earthlings, but I didn't actually answer the question about the movie Dominion. I will watch that movie because it's very informative, and I suggest everyone maybe can check out that movie yourselves. I just wanted to point out one question I was going to ask Ted about the water protection. Like why is Nestle still grabbing our water at rock bottom prices when we should be really protecting some of our resources?
So let me respond. I don't know the film Dominion, but if people in this room want their MVP to sponsor a showing of it, I'd be pleased to do that. On the water, I can just say I've signed the pledge, Peter, to move to phasing out bottled water. I'm a little embarrassed that the only bottled water here this evening is from hiding the bottle down here. I think it's important that we treat Mother Earth and the aquifers with sacred resources. When I was Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and we were looking at the green belt, we added 40% to the green belt. We call it the blue belt. It had to do with water courses, streams, creeks, rivers, and such. Very, very important. About 85% of our precious wetlands have disappeared, sadly. And, they've fallen victim of let me be blunt, some greedy development, far too greedy development in places where it shouldn't happen.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question from the audience, and this one goes back to you, Sandy. And I believe you touched on this, but you'll get an opportunity to elaborate further. Well, there is a shortage of long-term care beds. What would you do to meet this need?
Well, it's in our platform, and let me just be perfectly clear that is one of the key issues that the New Democrats are focusing on, is in fact the crisis in long-term care. So we've made an absolute commitment that we will increase the number of long-term care beds. I want to get the number right. So it's 40,000 more long-term care beds. And in addition to the beds, I mean, we talk about beds, but what we also have to understand is that there needs to be people that attend those beds. So it's not just beds, it's the staff that serve those beds. And one of the things that is not well understood, or maybe well understood, is that the people that work in these long-term care homes, the people that are there with our loved ones day in and day out, often they are working part-time jobs. They may have 2 or 3 jobs that they're cobbling together. They often do not have benefits at all. And even in some instances, some of the new provisions from the changes that the current government has made to the minimum wage and employment standards, they can't share in those because they don't have a full-time job, so they don't get the holiday benefits that were included in that when they are working part-time. So, it's one thing just to make sure that we have the beds there, but we have to make sure that the people that are looking after our loved ones also are treated well. And, it really is also important that we have a standard of care. So right now, there is no standard of care. I mean, many of these long-term cares hospitals are private, for-profit. They're driving a lot of profit out of looking after our seniors. And so we need to make sure that there's a standard of care. So we are proposing, and we have proposed in the past in the House, that there's a minimum standard of 4 hours of hands-on care, which is really the very least that we can expect for our seniors. My husband's aunt is 95 years old, and when we go to visit her in the long-term care facility, they come in and say, "We have time to give you a bath today, Violet. We have time to give you a bath." And it's not fair either to the residents, and it's not fair to the staff, because basically they know one another. So it's something that is, it's about funding and it's about the beds, but it's also about the humanity that we need to approach when we have our seniors and our loved ones. It's about their dignity, and they earned it and they worked for it.
Did either one of you want to take a minute to respond to the same question?
I think many of these issues are symptoms of a societal crisis, really. Who here likes traffic jams? What about hydro prices that are high? No? So it's all connected. We're spending so much time traveling to our jobs. Some people 2 hours every day, and they don't have 5 minutes to spend with their parent or an aunt or someone that really, that's part of the community compassion that we really need to rejuvenate. So one of the challenges is the 3 Ps, like the public-private partnerships, and we're selling off the 407 and Hydro One. So we're actually building this infrastructure on public dollars, and then we're selling it off in the private interest benefits. So really, it's time to rethink, and the Greens are gonna. That's why everything is connected, and we're actually going to give funding for people so they can stay with their parents and stay with their loved ones and be part of that beautiful process of aging and supporting each other. And that will allow more people to age in place as well.
Thanks.
I'll respond to the question about long-term care beds. The simple reality is we need to be investing more money to ensure that happens, and it needs to happen. When we hear about hospital beds, that's not as big an issue as home care and long-term care. You know, if there are 20% of the folk in our hospitals who are alternative level of care who really shouldn't be in the hospital, they could be treated somewhere else. It's really, really important that we open that avenue up and clear the backlog. On the ambulance issue, there were 30 code zeros. We had a Four Corners meeting with the government, the city, and the hospital. A simple staffing change reduced that to 1 code zero just by having a triage system put in place. So it's not always throwing money at things, it's needing to be accountable and to organize yourselves well. And we're committed to that.
Give an opportunity just to add something to that? Does that break your form?
I don't know, can we get a ruling on this?
Be real quick about it.
Okay, well, we're gonna go with the next. We're gonna go with the next question.
So then I'll just somehow put this in there.
You
whether it's
can
related to the
work
question
it
or
in,
not.
I'm sure, but it's meant to be a forum, not a debate. So
No,
we're
yeah.
trying to get to some. We have there's piles of questions over there we're trying to get to. So a lot of them are on healthcare. So I'm sure you'll get an opportunity. There's another healthcare related question for Ted. Why is there a shortage of doctors when we have so many foreign trained docs who pass Canadian medical exams?
Well, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Do you want to put that mic along?
Nobody has a cold up here.
Yeah. Well, a big part of that is the structure. You know, and not to make enemies here or offend anybody, but the OMA, Ontario Medical Association, isn't particularly keen to repatriate doctors and work with foreign-trained practitioners. That needs to change, and we need to work at that. There are a lot of difficulties now with students graduating, getting residencies, and we're prepared to move on that so that those folk who have contributed a lot of their time, energy, and resources to qualify as medical doctors can in fact get the placement they need so that they can serve folk, particularly in rural and northern areas where doctors are a little harder to come by. Why we just need to be training more. We shouldn't be closing medical schools as some other parties have done. I won't get, it's not supposed to be a debate, so I won't get into that, but we need to be working at it. We need to be recruiting, repatriating, bringing people home who are trained in Canada, making it easier for people to set up practices. And I'm a big believer in the whole family health team concept. That's, where primary care can be provided 24 hours a day with on-call. That is really the way medicine needs to go, and we're leading the way in that regard here in Hamilton.
can I just add?
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, before I mentioned, and actually Ted mentioned innovation as well. Yeah, so can we harness some of the expertise of the nurse practitioners or midwives and free up some of the doctors to perform more critical roles? Myself, just speaking on the general theme about endorsing doctors from other countries, I actually taught a course for many years up at the Mohawk College. It was a renewable energy course, and it was for new Canadians. And most of the people that came were highly credentialed. Some had run departments in the United Nations. However, that's where they were discriminated against with their degrees. So they couldn't find jobs, and it was so discouraging to see that frustration on their part because they were so gifted and committed. And in the end, they did it for their children. So they did it for their next generations. And really, that's where we need an approach where all parties are working together and comparing ideas. And then we can figure out, hey, what are some of the steps we can take forward working together? And that's a cooperative approach that we don't see enough of during these election campaigns.
And you've got a minute to respond to this one, Sandy.
Okay, so the OMA have a program, or they have a campaign. It's called Not a Second Longer. And these are the doctors that work in the hospitals, and I went to one of their meetings, and they are saying that they cannot operate in the hospitals such as they are. They're talking about the fact that the hospitals, essentially hospital budgets have been frozen for the last 4 years, and that they are concerned that they can't, not only can they not take any more cuts, that they need an increase in funding. And we're not even talking about the infrastructure. So hospitals themselves have a huge backlog of infrastructure problems. And hospitals, hospitals struggle to pay their hydro bill, as does any other institution. So they're struggling with their finances. But so that's bad enough. But worse than that, and I will take an opportunity to say it's unfortunate that the candidate for Doug Ford, the Progressive Conservatives, is not here. Because what's worse and what's frightening, and what I hear on the doorstep, is where are we going to get $6.2 billion worth of efficiencies? We're talking about a progressive conservative government that in the last time they were in power closed hospitals and fired nurses and closed beds. So it would be great to get some answers on what the Doug Ford and the Conservatives have around healthcare, which is a very big concern for folks.
Okay, so we have 3 very similar questions that are each actually addressed to all 3 candidates. So I'm just going to sort of lump them together and give you each 2 minutes to respond to the topic of, it talks about, well, there's training for nursing home staff and so on. So what is being done to properly train nursing home staff in working with dementia patients? How is your party supporting and encouraging mandated geriatric training for all healthcare professionals? What funding will it commit? And this third question is very similar, so it's on that topic. We will start with, who started last time? Sorry. Peter, you're in the middle. Go for it. 2 minutes.
Good call.
Thank you, that's an honor. So the Greens have general policies in this area that they're going to basically train staff so they can deal with, as I mentioned before, addiction, mental health, and also the special needs of people in aging conditions. So if I can speak a bit about the prevention and the active lifestyle, this is where if we get out of our houses and away from the screens and into the communities, and doing some of those innovative activities even within our neighborhoods, there's an opportunity for real innovation. So that's that active lifestyle. Like they say, instead of doing a crossword or a jigsaw puzzle for hours, just going up and taking walking halfway around the block is so good for the body and also for the mind. So it's kind of looking at all the different approaches, taking a holistic approach. And of course, we can increase funding, but why not look at the options and try different projects? Because again, at my house, or with my family, my one brother retired early, and not everyone knows how to give back. He does. And he is so good to my mother. And I think if everyone could give back, it's good for all of us. We're not heading away on the vacation all the time. We're actually part of our community and investing and supporting others, because really by walking with others, the people that taught us how to walk, we're actually learning a lot from that.
Go ahead, Sandy. Yeah.
So that's a big question, so I'll just I'll address parts of it. And one of the things around mental health and addictions is that the funding and the services are fractured across many ministries. So one of the things that we're proposing, that the New Democrats have in our Change for the Better plan, is to make sure that we put all of those services and all that expertise under one ministry, a mental health and addictions ministry. So that will also be the first beginning to understand the scope of the problem. And the problem is huge in scope. I mean, we hear all kinds of stories, not just seniors and older adults, but our youth. I mean, there's an opioid crisis in our community. There are youth that wait up to a year just to get. I mean, you can have a youth that has identified suicidal tendencies and needs help, and they can wait up to a year to get looked after. So that is something that we will address right away. The other thing is that there is the Ontario Dementia Strategy. We've committed a pledge to shore up that with funding, to address that both to look at prevention, the kinds of things Peter is talking about, but also the kinds of services that families need to support their families at home or when they're in long-term care. And you know, it's a very simple thing, but I think that this shows, it speaks to the kind of how the New Democrats get it. I mean, we get what families go through, and we've heard in this community and other communities these horrific stories about families that have been married for 50, 60, 70 years, and then they have to go in long-term care, and they go to two different ends of the community. And so it seems like a small thing, but it just speaks to the compassion and that we get it, that we will ensure that families have the right to stay together when they go to long-term care facilities.
Thank you. You're up, Ted.
Thanks very much. I was at the ground turning, the opening of the Bob Kemp Hospice. And our government was the first government in Ontario to commit resources to palliative care. There's some 72 centers, I believe, currently in Ontario that are being in large part funded by the provincial government. There are another 20 scheduled. I remember when the sod was turned and the building started, Dr. Kemp raised his cane in the air and turned to me and said, "Now, Ted, we got to build the next one." It took off from there. People deserve to be treated like angels at least once in their lives before they leave this place. That's a Mother Teresa quote, by the way, when she was asked, how do you do it, Mother? That was her response. So, I'm a little concerned though about hiving things off. One of the problem tragedies of mental health is that it has a lot to do with fear and stigma. And I'm not sure you want to, I think we've got problems training staff to be holistic and being aware of things. By the way, midwifery and nurse practitioners were both initiatives started by our government. But the training needs to be integrated so that you can deal with things. If you hive things out, that could actually feed that stereotype and stigma that's there. I think we need a comprehensive, integrative healthcare program that ensures that medical practitioners understand mental health and where the resources are without hiving it off so it's seen as something tragically separate.
Okay. We are switching topics now. We might come back to healthcare, who knows, but we are moving on to hydro. First question for Sandy. What would you do to change hydro and its associated costs?
Well, that's a key feature of our plan Change for the Better, and I would say we are the only, let's just be clear, first of all, Doug Ford has no plan around hydro, and we are the only party that has a plan that is recognizes that we really should never have privatized this in the first place. I mean, the fact that this was something that was, bought and paid for by our grandparents and our parents, and in my opinion, it's something that should have been held in trust. I have kids and I have grandkids, and this issue is the number one reason why I decided to get in the election in the first place. I was really, to be perfectly frank, quite outraged that this was sold and that it was never in the platform, that Captain Wynne didn't run on selling our hydro system. So part of the reason I was proud to join the New Democrats is that they have a plan, a clear plan, it's costed, how we will bring hydro back into public hands. I mean, imagine that we have a public hydro system and it costs less. So we have a plan, and you can read it, it's on our platform, it's on our website, where we will buy back the dividend. We will use the dividends that we will get from our hydro. So we still own some of hydro, we haven't sold it all off yet. So we will use the dividends from hydro, and we will buy back hydro so that it comes into public hands, so that we can then control not only the cost, but we have other ways of controlling that utility, including, people are quite upset. I mean, Doug Ford talks about the $6 million man that he's going to fire right away. Well, he can't, because it's privatized. But we will, when we are a majority shareholder, then we can have control of those kinds of things. And so we have a very clear, robust plan. We're the only one that is supporting a plan to bring it back into public hands. It's fully costed, and it's for anyone that thinks that did belong to us, and should belong to us again. The New Democrats are the party that's supporting that and fighting for that.
Okay, Peter?
I've worked many years in the utility industry, and one of my pet passions has been the expensive nuclear power and the uranium cycle. And it's something that's never really covered in detail, but the electricity price, the reason why they're so high, like 70–80% of it is because of the nuclear power issue, and it's never discussed. I know the NDP will never discuss it because there's a small union there. And at some point we have to move beyond the union protection and actually focus on an issue. So the Greens think, okay, part of Hydro One's been sold off, that's the distribution system. Instead of paying mega bucks to buy it back, why don't we move forward and focus on developing the microgrids within our communities? So down the road, when we don't have the huge centralized power plant, we can have decentralized systems within our communities, right? We can have innovative ones, solar, wind, and combined with conservation. That is truly the transition town, like a sustainable community that will create so many jobs. So electricity is a huge issue.
Thank you. 1 minute for you, Ed?
Yeah, it's a tough topic in 1 minute.
Well, we got a few more questions on hydro.
So let me just say this. Hydro has been a major issue for every government over the last 4 years, including ours. One of the difficulties that we faced when we came to government in 2003 was a $23 billion stranded debt. Remember, the Tories wanted to privatize the whole thing, and a $50 billion deferred maintenance. We invested $73 billion to fix the system. Today we have a clean, reliable, and stable system that is, frankly, the envy of most jurisdictions around us. When people who come and invest in Ontario, when you ask them over a beer why you came, they say three things. You've got a great healthcare system, you've got a wonderfully skilled workforce, and you've got a stable hydroelectric process that we want to take advantage of.
Hey, the next question goes to you as well. It's also on hydro. What is the Liberal Party going to do about, what is the Liberal Party going to do about Hydro's $1 billion gift to contractors in Oakville, Mississauga?
Thanks for making me aware of that. I'm not.
I wasn't sure myself if that was
precisely sure. I do know that that when we had the gas plant issue in Oakville and Mississauga, I don't know if you know this, but the OEB decided to place 17 gas plants. One was in Oakville, one was in Mississauga. It was in both Oakville and Mississauga's official plan. Oakville and Mississauga took themselves to the OMB and said, we're opposed to this. They couldn't, the OMB says, well, you can't take yourselves to the OMB, that's not how it works. Every party at that time pledged to close those gas plants. I think the Tory party was the first party to do that, and HUDAC estimated to be about $1 billion. We had the joy of being elected government to move forward with the pledge that all three parties made. What this specific question is about, I'd love to get some more information, maybe in the interregnum, and try to be as helpful as I can, but I'm at a loss to specifically talk about a single contract that somebody's lent or whatever to somebody in Mississauga. Was that the?
It said Mississauga, Oakville.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we retort to that, or did you want to?
Sure, yeah, okay, go ahead. You got a minute
So
there.
Ted, you weren't aware of the high-level ranking official that's being put in jail for deleting all the files? Chief of staff? I don't, anyway, the greater challenge is in politics, we should be doing the right thing and trying to hide things. Like I liked Dalton McGuinty, but then when I heard about this, I said, my gosh, why are we doing this, right? Like, why are we hiding and pretending and letting someone else take the blame? So this is part of integrity. Right now, the Clean Energy Act in the province is actually has some good aspects to it. It's focusing on electrification of the system, getting rid of fossil fuels. However, it's not enough. Climate change, who here is concerned about climate change for the grandchildren? It's so big that we really have to start doing something aggressively. Let's get ourselves off the roads, let's get ourselves within our own communities, and let's start investing in local solutions.
Here.
Okay.
No retort.
Okay. This question is directed at Peter Ormond. What does your party plan for the Pickering Nuclear Generating Station?
You've answered this one, I've heard of.
Closure.
Yeah.
Seriously, why are we spending tens of billions of dollars to refurbish a plant when we should be closing it and then starting the decommissioning process? The decommissioning process is decades long as well. So I know Ted mentioned clean and green for the nuclear waste. Does anyone realize what we're doing with the low and mid-level waste in Ontario? It's called the Deep Geological Repository. We're going to bury it 1 kilometer underground, 1 kilometer inland from Lake Huron in Goderich, Ontario. And it has a design life of 500,000 years. So is that clean and green, really? It's really, we need to transition towards small distributed systems that are going to create jobs. And we have to be honest about the risks of this waste that we're producing.
Go ahead, Cindy.
I mean, I agree with Ted that how we produce energy and how we use energy is, one of the biggest issues that this previous government has to deal with. And I also agree with Peter that these are some hard questions and that we need to look at them. Specifically to the decommissioning of Pickering, I know that Andrea was asked that today, and that the whole idea of having a hydro system or an energy system that serves the best interests of the people and not the best interest of shareholders, as it is now when you privatize something, is key to the decisions that we would make going forward, and that she will take the best advice from the experts on decommissioning such an old and aging facility. And so that's something that she talked about quite a bit today. And I mean, I don't know whether we're going to talk specifically about the carbon plan that the Liberals have as well. I mean, that's part and parcel of what we're talking about. And so, at the risk of not having another opportunity to say it, that I do, agree that we have made some good strides in addressing some of these issues, but we still have a long way to go, particularly with how carbon tax impacts people differently across this community.
Did you want to address that one?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, there you go.
Of course, about 62% of our base power comes from nuclear energy. There has not yet been a decision on Pickering. It's something that's being examined, and I don't disagree with Andrea. We need to look at what is in the best interests of folk, and are there alternative green, windmill, solar energy. Peter and I have a shared sense of purpose with respect to that. We've had many long discussions about converting to a greener, cleaner, keener system. That having been said, there are also 180,000 people who work in the industry, and that's a lot of folks. So if you're going to phase that out, you better have a plan around how alternative energy is going to come into place. It hasn't been the most popular program, by the way, in parts of Ontario, the windmill, solar energy stuff. So I just flag that as an interesting dynamic as well. And waste, by the way, waste management, nuclear waste management is a federal issue.
All right, I have 5 questions on the same theme, so I'm just going to put it to all 3 of you for 2 minutes each. It is dealing with senior services in Dundas. Do you see the need for more facilities for seniors in Dundas? The Dundas community needs a public activity center for seniors. What will you support it, and what are your views? We need a recreation facility in Dundas, so they're all essentially the same. So we can start with you, Ted.
Yeah, it would be, my wife and I live in Dundas. We know the community fairly well. There's a really lovely senior center there currently, which is being used, well used. In terms of services, the Dundas Community Services is an outfit that shepherds a lot of good ideas through, and you know, if there's a shared sense of purpose to move to a different kind of outfitting of facilities to serve seniors, I'd certainly be open to that. I want to talk specifically though about palliative care. I've been on the forefront of working with St. Joe's Villa and the Lynn to acquire 6 palliative care beds and the funding for that. They would like to see an additional 4 beds, and that came up maybe a month or so before the election was called. I've been working with the Lynn and with St. Joe's Villa and a number of other folk who would like to see that happen. I'm committed to seeing that through. I think there should be 10 palliative care beds in Dundas. There should be palliative care beds in a number of communities, and it's a passion that I have, Madam Chairperson, and want to see through. There's a number of seniors in Dundas just have to go through and look at Amica and some of the other buildings there that have different needs. Fortunately, there's a good focus on healthy senior living, and that's been supported with some grants from our government, and will continue to be so as far as I know. But yeah, we need to look at it. We need to look at the strategy. We count on our partners. You know, a lot of good ideas get lost because nobody listens, right? I'm certainly prepared to continue to listen to issues related to seniors in Dundas.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Over to you, Sandy. Go ahead.
Thanks.
Okay.
So Dundas is not unique in needing services for older adults and seniors. And so, I mean, Dundas has an aging population, aging more than the rest of Hamilton, but they don't have, in my estimation, the kinds of access to recreational services, the kinds of things we expect from seniors, so that they're not socially isolated. They can go out and, you know, swim, and they can meet with their friends. So it really isn't there in the way that it should be, given the number of seniors that are in Dundas. And I would just say that one of the reasons, and bear with me, is that, you know, a lot of the senior centers are the responsibility of the city of Hamilton to develop that. And certainly we would, you know, the province would do that in partnership, and the Democrat is committed to partnering with communities to create hubs hubs out of schools and so forth. But you know, when Mike Harris was in power, he downloaded so many costs to the municipalities that I don't know how you feel about your tax bill, but it's like crazy trying to just maintain your tax bill. And so the city of Hamilton has an infrastructure deficit. They really don't have any money to invest into any community centers, never mind for seniors. And so really, this Mike Harris downloaded these costs, you know, 20 years ago, and to be perfectly frank, in 15 years the Liberals haven't really uploaded many of those costs to the point where municipalities like the city of Hamilton can invest in our seniors. You know, and the city of Hamilton has the motto, it's the best place to raise a child and age successfully. So really we need to be putting some, you know, we need to put our money where our mouth is on this issue. So I think we have a lot of work to do in that area.
Okay, over to you, Peter.
You know, one thing that struck me is we have all different colors up here, but 99% of the issues and the solutions are common to all of us. And that's something that really, the system has to change right now. Right now, so many are inspired to vote for something they don't want, and then really we don't know much about the other choices. So, yeah, but I mean even within ourselves. So this is where we need proportional representation. I know many people here are probably members of cooperatives, car share cooperative, bank. Either way, we need a political cooperative. And then we'll all be part of the solutions together. And speaking of solutions, you look at Hamilton. We have a GO station that has 2 runs each way per day. So it's a token gesture. Ted, we need more than that.
It is more than that.
Well, it's not. I live, yeah.
Check the schedule.
I do. I'm talking about from the North End station. Okay, and then another, so speaking of solutions, the Greens are going to focus on, if somebody builds a new structure, we're going to mandate that they need 20% affordable housing in that structure. So what that's going to do, it's going to start building the community back. We're going to have diversity within the community instead of these monster homes or high-priced condos exclusively. So that's what we need to do. It's part of the reintegration of community.
We've done that.
Well, we need to do more of it. And yeah, it's really.
When I was minister, we did that.
Where did you do it?
Okay, hang on. I don't want to start going into a debate here.
Okay, so we can do more, and together, working together, we really have to be honest, and the solutions aren't that complicated.
So it's a pretty good segue into our next question, and this goes to all 3 candidates. And whoever has the mic can just start us off. It doesn't really matter. You're all going to get your 2 minutes. What is your priority for public transportation in Hamilton, LRT, or buses? I guess.
Well, no, stick paper, scissors, rock. Okay. Oh yeah, you go first. You go first. I don't know, Peter.
Okay, the Greens are all for mass transit. I know we have, right now we have the LRT design. Let's just get it in place. Worst case, if there are some issues, we can upgrade or optimize it 30 years down the road. But let's start moving on, because our city's been in a dead end for a long time. So that's one aspect of mass transit. You can have the LRT, and then you can have buses shooting off the last miles for that. I mentioned as well, interconnecting to other cities. We really need to follow through on the Metrolinx GO stations. And I hope, that's something we need. It's non-compromising, because they're just sitting there collecting dust. They look good, but we have to do better than that. The other thing is active lifestyle. Let's get us out there walking and riding our bikes and whatever mode of transportation. I'm a member of the car share. I used to be on the board for them. I'm a member of the SoBe bike share. I'm all for cooperating, and that's really what we need to do. And if anybody has any ideas, let's see if we can implement them.
So I think we are all well aware of the problems that we have right now in HSR. And you know, using public transportation, it's nice for us when we have a choice. It'd be nice to leave the car at home. It's nice for us to be able to take a bus, but it's not actually a choice for some people. I mean, some people rely on HSR because they don't have a car, or they rely on it to get to work. And right now, we have an HR system that is just not functioning. There's all kinds of canceled buses. Exactly, it's terrible. Thank you. And you know, I have in my campaign office, I have all kinds of volunteers, and we're in Dundas, 177 King Street West in Dundas. And you know, our volunteers try to get on the bus, and their bus gets canceled. And Ainsley Wood is an example that has terrible services. Never mind bus service; they don't have a recreation center there. So you know, we need to look at fixing our first form of transportation, which is buses. I mean, HSR has been in operation for 100 years, and why is it in this state that it is in? And so I mentioned earlier about downloading. One of the things that Mike Harris did, and that again, Kathleen really didn't bother to take away from the burden of the municipalities and our residential tax, is the cost of local transportation. So one of the things that we've committed to get those buses moving is to take back 50% of the cost of operating, not just in Hamilton, but in municipalities across Ontario. We'll take back that 50% burden from the transportation system, the local bus system, because it's not a choice. It's something that is vitally needed for people to get to work, people to go visit family and friends. It really isn't just an option. It's just a fundamental service that we should just expect to be there. We need to fix that first.
Thanks very much. I'm an unabashed advocate for my city. Part of my job as the only government MPP is to listen to council who requested unanimously that we move with LRT. They subsequently reaffirmed that decision some 62 times. I was asked to go to bat, I did. I was asked to fight for full funding, I did. We're the only municipality in all Ontario to receive full funding, saved about 140 millions of dollars there. You know, municipalities like Waterloo and Ottawa who embraced light rail transit are now into phase 2, phase 3, because of the economic engine that has become. We need to connect the dots. GTHA, we need to do that responsibly. Some of the people in parts of the suburban communities I've represented have said, you know, the downtown's a black hole, we're just dumping money in there, it's a waste. And I say to them, I don't agree with that perspective, but let's assume for a moment that you're right. Wouldn't the very best thing we could do be to fix it? There is all kinds of anecdotal and specific information from other municipalities and our own that investing in a good rapid transit system and freeing the buses up to fulfill that Rapid Ready plan. I don't know how many people here have read the Rapid Ready plan, probably not too many. It's the kind of book you can't pick up once you put it down, right? But it's good and it's important, and if we can get that main corridor sorted out and free those buses up, we can really improve things. My job as an MPP is to fight for my city, and I did that, and I'm proud of it. Thanks.
Okay, we're moving from transportation. There's a couple of questions here about the intersection of municipal and provincial governance. So, municipal governments set up their own integrity commission and terms of reference. Would you or your party be prepared to appoint an integrity commissioner to each municipality and terms of reference? For you, Sandy.
So let me be clear that I'm not sure if that's something that is in our platform, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but I will say what I have seen and observed as someone that watches City Council. I'm on Cable 14 commenting all the time, and I have also watched what we see is inconsistent application of provincial rules from municipality to municipality. So the Ontario Ombudsman is quite clear on what some of those rules are, that as we all know, municipalities are a creature of the province, and so the province does absolutely have the jurisdiction and actually the responsibility and the authority to ensure that municipalities are run, they're transparent, they're they're ethical, and they're accountable. And so in Hamilton, we have an integrity commissioner that has been under some fire for not wanting to investigate certain councillors, or in the way that they have investigated actions and acts that have happened at City Council. And other communities in Ontario have more stringent rules around the function of the City Council, how often they go into in-camera meetings, and so forth. So I would say that it is absolutely the responsibility of the provincial government to ensure that if you live in Kitchener, you live in Hamilton, you live in Ottawa, that you can expect your City Council is monitored to the same degree as any other community. It's what we expect, and it's how we can continue to have trust in our government, and it helps to alleviate some of the cynicism and fatigue that people have when they have to talk about or listen to City Council, especially lately in Hamilton.
Go ahead.
I haven't received a round of applause yet. Yeah, integrity. And think of how much fun we could have by rethinking the system as well. And we read about it, talk about it, are excited about some opportunities in other communities, yet why aren't we implementing some of those positive measures that actually invest in the community here? We're afraid. We have to start trying some things and enjoying that path, because the old sinkholes are, like for example in Hamilton, we get money for gas taxes, and we're spending that to pave new roads. Let's get rid of some roads, seriously. And all this is coming down the pipeline with, as we say, automation, self-directed vehicles, vehicles that are going to be operating 24 hours a day, really. They say it's going to reduce the number of cars to 10% of what we have now. So this is, we live in a very exciting time for generations, one or two places down the road, but it's actually our generation that we're planting the seeds for that now. That's why I invite you to learn about all the parties, including the Greens.
Well, let me respond to the actual question about the integrity commissioners. No, I would not require every municipality to appoint an integrity commissioner. Some municipalities are so small that he or she might be the only staff person there. You know, so I just want to say that I would be favorably inclined towards municipalities who might want to come together and group themselves and hire somebody who, as an integrity commissioner, who is fully trained in what it means to be an integrity commissioner. Many municipalities have integrity commissioners that don't know what the heck they're doing, right? When I was Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, we undertook a review of the Municipal Act, and we really did strengthen considerably a lot of the provisions around integrity and around conflict of interest over the protestations of AMO, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, at some point. So that was important. I shepherded the review of the Ontario Municipal Board and had it replaced with the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, which will fight that cynicism that Sandy talked about when citizens get engaged in their own planning.
Okay, we have another question in the same sort of vein, I suppose. Municipal governments exist at the will of the province. What is your party's position on limiting the term of municipally elected officials? And I am going to give this to all candidates 2 minutes to respond. We can start with you, Ted, since you're the last one to go on the previous question.
I would be opposed to doing that. I think that's what elections are for. I wonder about why we would put in place a system where somebody who is doing an exceptional job and is leading the way in terms of building strong, healthy, caring, complete communities could arbitrarily be set aside because of some rule. I don't think that's an appropriate way to go in a democracy, and I would be opposed to it.
Is that great?
Go ahead. Sandy, do you want to go next? You're always in the middle there.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I was
at a conference, a summit recently, Ted, you were there, and the city of Hamilton wanted provincial candidates to be aware of all of the challenges that they have. And so some of the challenges we talked before is about, providing ambulance services, some of the concerns are about housing, some of the concerns are about the deficit, the infrastructure deficit. I mean, we talked a little bit about climate change, and we have not talked about the impact that the flooding and these extreme weather events are having on our tax base and our residential tax base. And so I would be hesitant to say that we are going to put term limits in when we haven't even begun to grapple the enormous amount of concerns that City Council has to deal with. I mean, I think that the thing that we need to understand is that we haven't funded municipalities properly. They don't have any revenue generating tools, essentially. I mean, they have very few. I mean, Peter mentioned the gas tax that they get, and they do here spend it on roads, but there's very, very few ways that the municipalities can raise money. Really, it's just our residential tax base and other service fees for services when we use rec centers and so forth. So, by the time a city councilor is elected and starts to understand the enormity of what it is they have to do and the lack of support that they're getting from their provincial government, I think we need to be the bigger question is, what do we do to ensure that city councils and councilors have the tools they need to be able to do the job that they've been elected to do? And so that's why people get cynical, because we see city councilors that are just sort of frittering around the edges because they don't have the revenue, they don't have the supports they need to fix the things that impact people every day, the frontline services. And so, I think we should be more focusing not just on term limits, but empowering municipalities through support from the provincial government to make our cities happier, healthier, and more affordable.
I think the challenge at the municipal level is the same as it is at the provincial and the federal level. We have this apathy to get involved. So in the last provincial election, only 51% of the eligible voters cast votes. And the Liberals, with less than 20% of the votes, eligible votes, gain 100% of the power. So all those other voices, the majority of the voices are cast aside. And the people that have been disengaged originally are still even more disengaged. So this goes back to the cooperative approach where we need to change the voting system, some type of proportional representation or a ranked ballot system or something. I know the Greens are for proportional representation at the provincial and federal level, but this apathy, why are we so apathetic? If that was in place, then some of the councillors that just don't get it, which isn't rare in Hamilton. If you don't get it and you can keep getting voted in, then why not just keep doing the same thing? At some point there's a sense of urgency, and that echoes what's happening at the other levels of government and around the world, really. Like, how many times are we going to read about an issue around, even speak of Nestle water, for example, or why are 30% of the population driving to work in Toronto every day and spending more, like, that's 2 hours each way times 4 hours a day. That's 20 hours a week. That's half of their work week in the car. So at some point we have to say, hey, I'm too smart to be doing this. And we all are too smart to be doing this. So let's figure it out.
Could we, Madam Chair, question, could we have a 1 minute rejoinder on this for all three? My opponents would agree, just to...
If your opponents agree, sure. I just want to say we have time probably for about 2 more questions after this, and then we're going to move on to closing remarks. So, but if you are all agreed just to take 1 minute on this particular topic,
I don't choose the questions against. Sure.
About the 4-year term.
Okay, sure.
I just have a couple of points I want to raise. First of all, I've long been a proponent of proportional representation. Argued that we had a referendum in the province that was rejected, as you know. Secondly, when we came to government, there was a $4.2 billion download, which we, walking through the rubble, picked up the pieces and uploaded that to municipalities. So that money has come back. The other thing, by the way, we also put in the Municipal Act, I did as minister, the provision for a ranked ballot, but that decision would be made locally. and it wasn't Peters, no. The other thing I would just want to footnote, in case anybody missed it, there's no reason why you wouldn't miss it, it's buried in the municipal act. Every municipality is required to have a climate change strategy. Did you know that?
Yeah, that's part of it. So the Liberals are doing some good things, but they're not enough. It's like climate change light. Let's start doing it. I'm serious. Who wants us to start really? Let's plant trees all over the place. Let's get us out of our cars. Let's set up the mass transit system.
Okay, I'm prepared to rejoin.
It's time.
Yeah.
Who's going to vote green in here?
I'm not. So yeah, so let's, I mean, I don't know how we got back onto climate change, but I would again go back to the fact that Kathleen Wynne sold off our hydro system. And while there, as Peter said, there's some good things that have happened, we're now in a position where our hydro system is now buying coal generating plants in the US. I mean, this is what they've done. This is where you put profit back into a system that is supposed to serve the best interests of people, not shareholders. And by that, I don't just mean affordable rates. I mean the kinds of things we're talking about in terms of climate change and carbon tax. When you do not have control over that, you have no control over the things that we're talking about. And it's one thing to say that the Liberals privatize our hydro system, but it really is a disrespectful and unfortunate situation that the Conservative candidate is not here, because Doug Ford also has absolutely no plan to bring that back into public hands. I mean, when they were in power the last time, they were all about privatizing. And Ted, you brought this up before. I mean, they privatized the water testing system, and we had Walkerton. So I think we need to be really looking at what privatization does to our community.
Okay.
Now we're just getting right out of hand.
Yeah, so I learned my lesson about the rejoinder.
Yeah, no
because
more
you all
rejoinder,
were veering
yeah.
all over the place there. All right, lesson learned. Okay, so just looking at the time, probably this will be the last question. There's two related questions here, and I'm going to sort of put them together, and I'll let all three of you have 2 minutes to answer them. They're about rent control, and well, I'll read it right out here. What is the NDP standing on removing rent controls? I'm going to ask that of all of you. And there needs to be a way to control the price of retirement homes. So I guess we've got rent control generally and rent control for retirement homes. And oh, I lost my sheets. I don't know who started last time because of the whole rejoinder thing threw me off. So you're all going to get 2 minutes. Who wants to go first?
Start at that end.
There you go.
No, start with Ted.
Peter, you're going first?
Rejoining us, yeah.
Okay, all right. 2 minutes on rent control for retirement homes and for other types of accommodation.
Basically, we have to change where and how we're spending the money. So I'm just going to list some of the Green Party policies for affordable housing. One is we're going to put a tax on vacant property to make it harder for speculators, whether foreign or domestic, to use real estate as a lucrative place to park cash. So I know even in, I know someone downtown, and actually I got my hair cut there. It was $10. It was $10, and she said she has to pay over $2,000 each month just for the rent. That's 200 haircuts. And that's the challenge. We need a shift, like not only a moral inequality shift, but we need a shift in the amount of rent money people are paying. So we would also add a surtax on quick turnaround sales to reduce speculation. So because this speculation is just driving the prices through the roof. And also expand the non-resident speculation tax in the Greater Golden Horseshoe. So another option to create more availability would be to update zoning laws to allow alternatives to single-family detached homes, such as tiny homes, secondary suites, and laneway housing. let's be innovative. Incentivize municipalities to zone for the missing middle. So a combination of mixed-use buildings and medium-density housing types and rental units. So these increase residential densities while largely maintaining the look of a neighborhood. So create more affordable, safe rental housing options by working with municipalities to modernize bylaws and that currently prohibit or establish unreasonable barriers to creating additional housing, such as licensed basement apartments for some. So improve Ontario's inclusion. So basically these are all changing the rules within the municipality to be more innovative, and this is what we have to do in every sector that we're talking about tonight. Let's be more innovative. And the other item that I mentioned before, I'll just reiterate, was for any new building, we have to include 20% affordable housing.
Okay, thank you. Sandy?
Sure. So, you know, in Hamilton, we've heard the stories. We know how inaccessible housing is. Not just home ownership. It's, you know, I have kids that have grown up in this community, will never be able to afford at this rate, you know, to grow up in the neighborhood or to live in the neighborhood where they were raised. And so it's not just rental, it's home ownership. And Peter listed quite a number of great tools that we need. And, you know, they should all be available to us. And, you know, I've been to a number of workshops with this organization called Dundas Works in Hamilton, and they had a remarkable session on housing. And this group understands that it's not, we need all kinds of housing. You know, people in Dundas, as they age, become older adults, and want to stay there, and they don't know whether they can continue to afford there. So we need to have all the tools there. It is not just downtown Hamilton that's dealing with this. I mean, we hear about gentrification, and we hear about things called rent eviction, where tenants are evicted and they renovate, and their you know, rents skyrocket. We need to be putting in place, we should actually already have in place rules and planning policies that prevent that from happening. I know that recently we talked about, you know, what you're talking about is inclusionary zoning policy, and that's the responsibility of the provincial government to make sure that a certain percentage of new developments have affordable housing, either ownership or rental. And I know that I was at a meeting in downtown Hamilton. It was a group called the Downtown Secondary Plan Group. And how serious this is an issue for Hamilton, it was like a Wednesday night in March, and it was cold, and the room was packed. There was like 300 people at the library who thought this was a very important issue. So, you know, we have, and I would just say in the last 15 years, we have let this crisis evolve, and there are lots of tools to address it. And the sooner that we, you know, get a government that is committed to this, like the New Democrats, who instantly are going to look at 60,000 new affordable housing units, including supportive housing units that seniors may have. I mean, it's a problem that's didn't just happen overnight, but we've been asleep at the switch in terms of addressing the solutions that we need to make sure that people can afford to live in the community where they were raised.
Okay.
The others tell you what they want to do, ask them to show you what they've done. Many of the proposals that Peter articulated have already been put in place. As you know, we've had those conversations as well. Doug Ford, by the way, which says let the market decide. You know, he's not in favor of rent controls at all. I think that's worth noting. On secondary suites, we actually require in the new legislation that every municipality have a secondary suite bylaw. They have to do that, and if one isn't in place, the minister has the right to impose one. On inclusionary zoning and development charges, we need to find a way to incent the private sector to build purpose-built housing. One of the reasons it isn't built is they can't make money at it. So we need to understand that. The government doesn't have a big room with electricians and plumbers and whatever, and the phone rings and you go build houses in Sudbury or Hamilton. You got to work with the network that's there. And I think there's a willingness to do that. I've been working very closely with the Hamilton home builders. In fact, they acknowledged my work not that long ago around inclusionary zoning and secondary suites and some of the development charge stuff. There is a way forward. It includes identifying land parcels, like we did with the Mohawk College deal, which the Spectator in their editorial said was probably the best example of intergovernment cooperation they had seen in 40 years. So, you know, there are ways to do it. I wrote my graduate thesis on how to eliminate homelessness. Nobody read it except my professor. And, you know, which was too bad. But you know, some of the solutions, CMHC had a scheme years ago, Central Mortgage and Housing, 45 years ago, where you would get low interest, no interest loans, but in return you had to make at least 10% of your units available for geared income housing. That we got to bring that back. And fortunately, we have both a provincial and a federal government finally who are working together with a national and provincial housing policy.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're out of time for questions. Yeah, okay. So we have, I apologize if some of the questions, we obviously didn't have time to get to all the questions, and some of them were not posed to the candidates exactly as you had written them. I bunched some of them together because they were related in the interest of time to try to sort of get as many topics covered as possible. But did you want me to read the other questions out?
Yes, you don't mind.
There's a lot of them.
Because the plan was that we would email the remaining questions to the candidates, and if they are able to respond to them, the questions and the answers will be posted on the Hamilton Council on Aging website. So that, I think you all have a copy of that, so you can check out the website and see what questions and answers are there. And to wrap up, we're going to give each of the candidates a minute to just kind of wrap things up. And we are going to go in reverse order of the way things started. So I believe that means you're starting out, Sandy. 1 minute once you get the mic. Okay.
So I'd like to start by saying that I thought that the questions were very thoughtful, and I really do appreciate the respectful and thoughtful answers that we provided to all of you. But you know, I want to draw our attention to the province. And right now, the current poll has shown that 80% of Ontarians want change. And that means we will be getting a new premier. And I, like you in the room, respect Ted McMeekin. He's served this community for many, many years. But what we're looking at right now in the province and in Hamilton West-Ancaster-Dundas is the potential of having a government. You have a stark choice. You could have, you know, Andrea Horvath, who has put her platform out there. She's proposing a change for the better. It's a very stark contrast to who she's running neck and neck with, which is Doug Ford. He does not have a platform out there. As Ted alluded earlier, he's talking about $6.2 billion in cuts. He's also talking about spending. He talks about the little guy a lot, but really there's no numbers there. They do not add up. He talks a lot about respect for the taxpayers, but you know what? The first thing that you should do to respect a taxpayer is put out a platform, put out a budget, so that we can make this important decision informed. And so we do have a choice. We have, you know, we're going to have change, and it's a very stark and very important choice that we have to make. So again, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to June 7th, and we will have a new premier in Ontario. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Ted McMeekin, our Liberal candidate.
Thanks very much. Just for the record, I want to say I respect Sandy Shaw as well. She's got, and Peter and I have been friends for years. A lot of good ideas, and I think you know, kind of be like the helicopter flying up and looking down and trying to grasp all the good ideas and incorporate those together. I'm committed to, have always been committed to trying to do that. I believe budgets are moral documents. Show me your budget, and I'll be able to tell you exactly what you believe. I've never been prouder of a budget in the 18 years I've been able to serve than the one that came forward recently. It was a fairness budget. It was one that embraced care rather than cuts. It was one that was designed to narrow the gap between the richest of us and the rest of us, which next to climate change I think is the single most important issue we need to grapple with. I want to argue that I have the experience to continue, a willingness to continue, the heart to continue. We are the change, and I think our budget reflects that the people of Ontario want to see. And if we have a minority government, I want to serve. Thanks.
always find these debates fascinating because here, as I said before, we're three different colors, but we're actually here for the same reasons. And that's something that we really have to acknowledge between ourselves. And really, only the Green Party is pushing that. We need to make a statement and start saying, people, we don't have much, really, we've been talking about this for years. When I was a kid, we were the generation that were going to solve all the world's problems, and it's already passed 2 more generations. So now some people are pointing to, oh, the grandkids are, oh, they're so bright, but we're bright as well. So really, if we can start taking responsibility and make a statement with your vote, and we have to be respectful to each other, and that's talking about policies instead of just the gossip. And we don't want Trump North, but here you have 3 parties here, and somehow we're going to be divided. And in the last election, 20% of the eligible voters received 100% of the vote. Do you know, provincially across Canada, the Green parties were included, in the provinces were included in the public debates. And New Brunswick, PEI, and BC, and they all elected Greens. So why are we being left out of the mainstream debates here? That's a question for yourselves, and your grandchildren will be asking you that.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I guess that
Cheryl, thank you.
we're gonna have just a few quick closing remarks, but well, you're welcome. But yeah, just thank you to everybody who came out to support this democratic process, and thank you to the candidates for being here. And I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Before we close off completely, there are so many thank yous I want to express here on behalf of the group that put this together. The work that went into putting all of this together was tremendous. With the Hamilton Council on Aging and our own Retired Teachers of Ontario, we worked very hard to put this together. I hope it was the kind of format you enjoyed. Thank you. We have many unanswered questions here. So they will be turned over to the candidates, and if the candidates want to respond to them, they will be on the Hamilton Council on Aging website. There are many thank yous. I want to express a great deal of thanks to our candidates who took time out today and came in. And I'd like to also thank the Hamilton Spectator for allowing us to have this forum in the auditorium here. Also, we had the help of an AV and sound person to make sure that the sound equipment worked well, and I want to thank him as well. But there is one person I really want to say thank you to, and that's Cheryl Stepan. She did a marvelous job as our moderator. Thank you so much. And of course, we had a whole team of volunteers, and they were extra special. They really, really worked to make this a success. And our timer, how he kept that going, I don't know how he did it. But he did it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Remember, June 7th, it's voting day.